What does the Holy Spirit look like? Once a week, sometimes more frequently, we affirm our faith in God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We do this in one of the authorized forms of the Creed. Do you, like me, have some sort of image of Jesus in your mind as you confirm that you believe in him? Early 30s, long hair, beard, tanned from exposure to a Middle Eastern sun? And whether you want it or not, does the image of an older, grey-haired man, an indulgent grandfather perhaps, creep into your head when you say that you believe in God the Father? You may, of course, be much more spiritual than me and visualize Jesus and God the Father in an abstract, cosmic, incorporeal form. Either way, what do you see when you think about the Holy Spirit? Do you see a person, or a creature, or an element like wind or fire, or something entirely different? I looked at the way some artists have approached the task of representing the Holy Spirit, especially in relation to Pentecost. This icon by Andrei Rublev will be known to many of you. Nominally, the painting illustrates a story from the Old Testament, but it is generally understood as a depiction of the Holy Trinity. Here, the Holy Spirit is shown as a person, probably the figure on the right, though not all scholars agree. Each person has identical features. The similarity in both appearance and status of the three persons of the Trinity is taken to extremes in this 18th century Peruvian painting. In an attempt to convey the unity of the Holy Trinity, the artist shows a single figure but with three faces. The concept of one God is made clear, but I doubt whether anyone would find this strange hybrid image especially helpful today. Other artists adopted a different solution to the problem of painting the Holy Spirit. Here, the early 14th century Italian artist Giotto presents an illustration of the account that we have just heard in the reading from Acts. The 12 apostles, Judas has been replaced by Matthias by this stage, are locked in the upper room of a house in Jerusalem. They, and many other people from far and wide, are in the city to celebrate the Jewish Feast of Weeks. This feast, also known as Shavuot, marks the wheat harvest in Israel and also commemorates the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. It takes place at Pentecost, that is 50 days after the Passover. The Christian Church has retained the name Pentecost for today's feast, which is 50 days after Easter. In this painting, the Holy Spirit is represented by a dove. More of the reason why in a moment. 12 rays stretch from the dove, one to the head of each apostle. The rays would have been much more evident originally, as they were made of gilded tin, but this has now been lost. Giotto struggles to represent the sound like the rush of a violent wind mentioned in Acts, but he does show us the divided tongues as of fire that rested on the disciples' heads. The figures in the foreground, excluded from the room, strain to hear what is happening behind locked doors. Let's go back to the Holy Spirit. Why a dove? The Acts account talks about rushing wind and forked tongues of fire. There is no mention of a dove, but there is a precedent. When Jesus is baptized by John at the start of his ministry, we are told that the Holy Spirit descends on him in bodily form, like a dove. Doves fly, so there is an association with the air, and it is only one more step to get to a rushing wind. The same wind from God, perhaps, that swept over the face of the waters at the beginning of the book of Genesis. And a dove is much easier to paint than wind. It is a dove that represents the Holy Spirit in this mid-16th century painting of the same subject by Titian. Unlike Giotto, who gives us an apostles-only version of Pentecost, Titian includes Mary, as well as other women and members of Jesus' family. The format is essentially the same. Bright rays emanate from the dove, and they turn into flames as they reach the heads of the assembled company. Compared with Giotto's painting, however, this is a riotous scene. It makes clear why onlookers would have believed that the apostles and their companions were drunk. The combination of a dove and fire to represent the Holy Spirit became the norm. The liturgical colour for Pentecost, and any other day which celebrates the Holy Spirit, is red, the red of the tongues of fire that descended on the apostles. In this image, the tongues of fire have been incorporated into the form of a dove. This picture also cleverly gives the impression of movement, of a strong wind blowing. These paintings might provide a visual image of the Holy Spirit, but they do little to illuminate what the Holy Spirit actually is, or how the Holy Spirit works. In our Gospel reading, Jesus describes the Holy Spirit as the Spirit of truth, and he tells the disciples that it will guide them into all truth. That truth stems from a proper knowledge and love of Jesus. A painting by Lance Brown gives an idea of this message. The Holy Spirit is shown here as a rushing wind, entering into the heart of the figure who has opened both his or her mouth and arms to receive it. And what the Spirit brings is the cross of Christ, which is planted in the soul of the figure. One of the good things about this painting is that it can be read two ways. I have said that it shows the Holy Spirit going into a person, but it might also show the fruits of the Holy Spirit coming out of a person. What are the fruits of the Spirit? Paul tells us in his letter to the Galatians that they are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That's quite a lot of good things, isn't it? Who are the recipients of the Holy Spirit? Who are the people who produce these fruits? This Pentecost painting by Rebecca Brogan shows us. The Holy Spirit again appears as a dove, but this time it is held in the pierced hands of Jesus. The 12 tongues of fire descend from it, just as in the painting by Giotto, but they land not on the heads of the apostles, but on a global mix of people. Most interestingly, we recognize the central two figures as a Jew and an Arab. Jesus, of course, was both. My final illustration is a clip showing modern-day people receiving the Holy Spirit. Yes, they are all ordinary people, going about their everyday business. The Holy Spirit may be working in some or all of them. The evidence of it working will be in the fruits of their lives. What does the Holy Spirit look like? It looks like love, joy, peace, and a whole lot of other things. In short, it looks like Jesus.